All right. So we have one more presentation. One more presentation. This one is on proximity to schools. And then again, we'll have a discussion right afterwards. So I'm going to turn it back to Krishan.
Thank you, Steve. So our last lens for the night is proximity. Our objective here is to understand proximity and why they're important. We want to understand the issues of nearest homeschool assignments.
Right in your email.
And why is it important?
We're Facebook.
We want to understand this because reducing the distance and time travel lessens the burden of transportation on families and can also conserve district resources.
I sent you my email through Facebook.
So what is proximity?
Try it again, just
Well, one measurement of proximity that research team is working on is distance to assigned school. Again, it's one of the things that we'll be looking at within proximity. There will be a variety of other lenses as well. The following maps will show the percentage of students not assigned to their nearest school. Again, I'm going to say that again. The following maps show the percentage of students that are not assigned to their closest school. Proximity in this case is measured along road networks to approximate distances. Excuse me. So let's look at a cluster example and try to break this definition down. Again, for this particular lens, we have looked at Magruder. This is for illustrative purposes only. And when you start to see sort of the cluster average, and I'm going to hover my mouse right around there, you can see that the cluster average is about 53%, which means within Magruder cluster, middle school, 53% of students do not have the current school as their closest school, right? Again, I'm going to say that out loud again. Within Magruder cluster, when you look at cluster average 53%, what that means is that 53% of students do not have the current school as their closest school. And then when you start to see the range within that, you can see sort of the Shady Grove Middle School is at 30%, and the Redlands Middle School is at about 75%. And part of it, and you can sort of see in this map, and I'm just going to sort of move my mouse around that thick black line is the sort of the cluster boundary. And you can see that there are certain other schools, like for example, in the case of Shady Grove, Forest Oak and Gaithersburg, that might be closer, and which is why you kind of see these numbers that you see. And in the case of Redlands, there might, again, look at the cluster shape, and then you might be looking at Rosa Parks Middle School, or some other school up here, which might be, again, changing the numbers and pushing it up to 75%. So when we zoom out and start to look at these same proximity issues at elementary school level, we can see that in total, 37% of students do not attend their closest school. So 37% of total elementary school children do not attend their closest school. But again, as we have done with every other sort of analysis so far, look at the disparities within that. We can see that there is a certain school district or certain school attendance area where the maximum value is 94%, which means in that particular school attendance area, 94% of the students do not have that school as their closest school. And then there are values which are zero. There are certain schools where that value is zero, which means every student is assigned to their closest school, which is great. So what does that mean? Like when you look at the map on the right-hand side of the screen, again, try and focus on these adjacencies. Try and look at sort of the colors, grays next to sort of some of the darker shades. What does that tell us? And again, these maps are available also in your handbook, so you feel free to flip between proximity, diversity, utilization for elementary schools, just as an example. And you can sort of try and see if and assess for yourself if there are certain patterns, certain trends, certain things that kind of stick out and you'd want to talk more about. When we look at middle school, we can see that that number goes up to 45%, which means that 45% of middle school students do not attend their closest school. And middle schools have the highest overall proportion of students who do not attend the school closest to them. Again, that number is about 45%. But look at the disparities within that. You can see that there is a particular middle school where that value is 100%, then there is a particular middle school where that value is 0%. Again, I'd like you to focus on the map on the right-hand side of your screen, and you can see where the disparities are kind of visually and spatially, and try and see where the lighter shades or the grays are next to some of the darker shades. Again, what does that tell us? For high school, that number is about 38%. That means 38% of the students do not attend their closest school. And again, if you look at the disparities, those numbers are in certain school cluster, certain school attendance area, that number is as high as 76%, and then there is a certain student attendance area where that number is 0%. Again, that disparity, sort of, or that range of values that we see. Again, map on the right-hand side of the screen, please focus on lighter shades, grays, next to sort of blues and the darker shades of blues. And what does that tell us? So with that, I think we'd like to jump into table discussion. So Steve.
Great, so it's the same drill. We're looking for your feedback that you have about the proximity data and analysis that you just heard, and also that you can find in your books. And we're also wanting to know from you what else you think should be included in this part of the analysis. So we're running a little short on time here. We're going to make this 10 minutes. So do the best you can to make sure that everyone at your table gets a chance to share their perspective on this. Thank you.